Hey, what's going on, Los Angeles? What's up, Ramley? Welcome to the LA Football Show, LAFB Live on a Monday, talking all things Rams for the next 30 minutes. We're switching it up a bit. Last few weeks, we've done Mondays at 6 for Rams Talk. Tonight, we're doing 8 o'clock. Switching it up, see how that goes, and we'll see if we keep it here. We revert back to 6, so let us know what you prefer. We'd love to hear from you if you prefer Rams Talk at 6 or Rams Talk at 8, and we'll go from there. But joined as always by the Madman, Jamal Madney. I'm Ryan Dyrud, ready to talk all thing Rams. What's up, brother? Segment 3 of LAFB Live on a Monday. How we doing?
Segment 3. Let's hope, Ryan, that my Wi-Fi cooperates better than the end of segment 2. I was getting into like grandpa story mode with the Bruins, and unfortunately got cut off there. So all that means is we're going to have even more for our delightful listeners on ESPN Radio later this week. But hopefully the Wi-Fi complies here in beautiful Everett, Washington. So
yes, what are you at? Like a Radisson, a Marriott? What are you at?
At a Marriott Bonvoy. I mean, honestly, Everett, Washington is there's not much here. Just some factories and stuff. Thank God I'm in a hotel. Otherwise, I'd be afraid I'd get slashed. Everett, Washington feels like the beginning of every great like 90s slasher movie. Like I Know What You Did Last Summer and Scream and all of those, because it's just eerie and it's industrial and there's not much going on, and it's got all the makings.
Oh, okay, yeah, and it's Seahawks country, so that's enough right there for it to be a slasher movie. This is the Rams side, so just out of curiosity, is Everett, is that like east of Seattle, south? I mean, it can't really be north. You'd be in Canada basically. So
yeah, I'm sort of getting disoriented in terms of direction, but it's 41 miles from SeaTac, from the Seattle airport. So a bit of a trek.
Gotcha. Well, stay safe. If you're repping Rams stuff out there, represent it. But stay safe.
I'll just wear my Bobby Wagner jersey, and hopefully I'll be okay. So
yeah. Well, okay. Well, let me ask you this before we get, and this is related to the Rams, and I'm curious what you're going to say to this. But we did our UCLA segment just a minute ago. We didn't bring this up then. I don't know why, but at UCLA practice on Saturday, Seahawk receiver DK Metcalf was in town. Did you meet DK, and then what was he like? We're talking Rams now, which is a heated rival.
We met DK. A couple funny stories there. First of all, DK is a delightful guy. I mean, very charming, so gracious with his time. And we were able to take a couple of photos with him, and he was sort of terrific even on the sideline. Number two, and this is not breaking news by any stretch of the imagination, but to see DK live, I mean, with no pads, I mean, you don't appreciate the freak specimen that he is as much as you do when he doesn't have pads on. I mean, my God, he had one of these gigantic water bottles, and the water bottle looks small, right? I mean, it was one of these like huge tub of water bottles. It looked like one of those little Arrowhead water bottles, the way he was holding it around. I mean, he is just an incredible specimen of a human being. We sort of, Will and I kind of looked to our right and we're like, is that DK Metcalf? I was like, well, you're not going to confuse DK Metcalf with anyone else. I mean, they're sort of like DK Metcalf and like LeBron, those are kind of the two guys that you're never going to confuse with anybody else just in terms of physical specimen, or Giannis. And so sure enough, it was DK, and it was really funny. He was on the sideline, and there was a Niners fan that was begging to take a photo with him, and the guy had a Niners cap on, and DK would not take the photo with him unless he put the cap in reverse so you couldn't see Niners. And so he did it and took the picture. And so that was a really fun, kind of gregarious moment with DK, and he was so gracious with us, and got a chance to take a picture with Will, and wished him the best of luck on a great season, and he was kind of smiling and bopping around.
I love that. I mean, I think Rams fans could even agree with that. Like, we don't like Seahawks. They're a rival. DK's a rival. There's been so much fun between Jalen Ramsey and DK, but the public enemy number one is the Niners. And so
Yeah, of
anytime
course.
whatever team can jab the Niners, I think we would all join forces in that, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but
And the
so that's
funniest
great to
thing
hear.
too, Ryan, is our great buddy Will Decker, who's our UCLA guy. He's actually a huge Niners fan, growing up in the Bay Area. And so, but I joked with him. I said, I've never seen you smile as wide and were as happy as you were with DK Metcalf. I mean, we were on Super Bowl radio roll last year, the year before. I mean, we've been at a bunch of UCLA stuff together. We've been at the SC stuff. We've seen Rams, Chargers, all this stuff. He has never been as happy taking a photo with any athlete that he was with DK Metcalf. I mean, it was so sweet. It was just, he looked like a 14-year-old Will again. And, DK just brings that out in you,
Yeah. I mean, it's such a good analogy. I think it proves so much that, Twitter is not a real space, right? Like it's for people. Twitter's great. We use it obviously for our business. We've met so many great people through it, and we're able to, promote our brand. And a lot of people that listen to the show are because of Twitter. So thank you for that. But a lot of people will say things on Twitter they would never say in real life. And so on Twitter, or even just at a bar with your friends, you can say, oh, I can't stand that player. Can't stand that guy. But if you were to meet them in person, like you're still like, it's still a star. Like it is doing something that you could never do. And it reminds me even of Jamal. Like I think about this all the time too, with even like presidents, right? Like we never talk politics on the show. We never will talk politics on the show, but there's a lot of, like, I don't agree with a lot of presidents. I really don't agree with any presidents. I don't really prefer one party to the other. But if I were to meet them in person, I'd be like, you're the president of the United States. Like, I'm going to respect you. Like, I don't agree with you, but this is great. I want to take a picture with you. But like behind closed doors, everyone's like, oh, I can't stand that guy. The worst. Get him out of here. Impeach him. To his face, you're like, hey, let's dap. Like, this is cool. So it's just, DK Metcalf puts that on a bigger scale, if you will.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And now, I have the master copy of that photo. And so I think I'm going to have some real fun with some annotations there about Will's, fandom and becoming the new Hawks super fan. So.
Well, and last note on that, and then I swear we're getting into more Rams talk, but this kind of relates. But the funniest thing about this that just comes full circle is that you mentioned Will being a diehard Niner fan, being at a UCLA practice, seeing DK being gracious to take a picture. Radio Row last year in LA, Deebo Samuel's there. Will's like truly like Will's as a fan, like guy.
Yeah, and he whiffed. Yeah.
Turns him down twice for a picture.
Yes.
And so his
if Will was my dad, if Will was my dad and that happened to him, like let's say Deebo Samuel turned him down twice and DK was so gracious to him, my dad would have switched teams. He would have been like, the hell with the Niners. I'm a Hawks fan now, so.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's why as a business, obviously it's different. We approach these guys very differently, but as a fan, I don't even like going up to guys because I'm fearful that'll happen and it'll put a bad taste in my mouth. I'm like, I want to just imagine you as always being the gracious, charitable, like talk to everyone. And I don't want to be that guy that asks you something and then you turn me down and I have a bad taste. So anyway, Rams launched their offseason program today up in the Thousand Oaks area. So the season is back and going. And practices are starting, film sessions, workout programs, all of it optional for now up until mini camp, and then obviously training camp here in a couple months. But seeing as where this Rams team is, seeing as there's about 18 guys on the roster, I assume most of them will be at all of these optional opportunities to get back and get working out. But I think the main thing we'll talk about, and everyone in here, feel free to drop any questions or thoughts, but Stafford obviously there, interviewed by the media. And, my biggest takeaway from him was just how excited he is to be back. I think he looked almost youthful. He said many times he's not 25. He doesn't feel like he's 25 and is young, but he feels 100% healthy and ready to be back. And he just seemed so thrilled to be back with the Rams, with this coaching staff, with this team. And obviously it's day one of OTAs. Like, it's so early on, but the fact that a 35-year-old vet quarterback that now has a Super Bowl ring under his belt seemed that excited to be back with a team that seemingly is in full remodel, rebuild, whatever you want to call it, I think still shows what this organization believes it can do even this year, and then obviously what they're building for 2024 and beyond, and how Stafford is involved in those blueprints moving forward. I think that's the biggest key and important thing, because most vet quarterbacks do not want to be part of a remodel, rebuild, whatever. They want to go to a contender right away. Obviously, the Rams gave him his shot and gave him his ring, but he seemed like he doesn't believe this is a rebuild. He's like, he knows what they're doing to catapult them moving forward. I think that's the exciting thing about where this team is.
Absolutely, Ryan. And I think it's it's funny, tongue in cheek. You were saying about the 18 guys at practice, they probably can't do 7-on-7 drills. They could probably do 7 on none. They could maybe do 4 on 4. But 7-on-7 might be a little bit challenging. But I think to the Stafford point, so well said there. And I think sometimes when you're older, you need kind of a different challenge. You need sort of a breath of fresh air to feel alive and invigorated again. And I think he sees this as a very unique challenge. And I think that there would be a different feeling if the Rams were this title contender and there was sort of this burden of expectation versus, sort of flying under the radar now with not a lot to prove, with, a bunch of, lunch pail type of guys, blue collar type of guys. And what let's see what we can do with this group. And I think there's something really exciting about that. And I think if you look at the course of Matt Stafford's career, I think he's always sort of enjoyed being that underdog. Obviously with the great years that he had in Detroit, that was an underdog team. Obviously, he's now won with the Rams, and now he gets an opportunity to be that underdog again. Even when you go all the way back when he was in college at Georgia, and when he was being called the next John Elway at Georgia, you could tell he was, there was a lot of pressure. And he didn't really sort of play completely up to his expectations in that regard with all of that pressure. Sometimes, last year and the year before, even with the win, sometimes it was a little bit challenging for him to sort of live up to the hype of being kind of that championship quarterback. I think now he kind of goes back into this natural role of his as the underdog. And I think it just makes him very happy, peaceful, and excited to move forward. And that's really what I took away from his opening remarks today.
I mean, look how happy he looks in that photo. I mean, it's
unbelievable.
That looks happier than he looked after winning the Super Bowl.
I know. Exactly. I mean, it's really unbelievable. I mean, after the Super Bowl, after he won the Super Bowl, there were photographers flying off of the podium left and right that he was elbowing out of the way, so he's, he's looking really happy here.
But no, and you said it best there, that, and this is what I was thinking when I was, watching OTAs and watching his little press conferences. After you win one, and then immediately it's run it back mentality. No matter what sports you're in, it's always that. And obviously they put that on themselves. I mean, in their parade, they're saying run it back. But then that's just every team. That's the hope, right? You don't want it to be one and done. You want to run it back. And that puts such unbelievable expectations and a burden almost on you, as it should. I'm not giving excuses. There should be that. But it does weigh on you. And then when not only do you not live up to those expectations, but you get injured, your entire team gets injured, your coach contemplates retiring, all these different factors are going in. And then now you can go into an offseason feeling fully healthy. The core that truly wants to be here is here. Your coach is fully committed and all in, and has changed his way of doing things in a way of bringing in different coaches, bringing in different philosophies, feeling refreshed almost, if you will. And it just brings in a sense of a new beginning, probably what it felt like when Stafford came here the first time. Yeah, there was a lot of pressure because he was traded for 2 first-round picks. The Rams were in this all in, but it was still a new beginning. It was a fresh start, and it was like that excitement of just the unknown, if you will. And now there's that new excitement of a lot of unknown, and you have that on top of no pressure. I mean, there's literally hardly any expectations for this team. Like, me and you are probably the few out there that think this team has a chance to win the division just because of how poor the division of the NFC is, and think that they actually can either win the division or at least squeak in as a wild card team. We're probably one of the few that does that, because most of the league, most of the media, most of the fans basically have considered this just a rebuild year, prepping for 2024. And when that is the expectation, I think it it alleviates a lot of pressure and stress, and guys can just go out there and get back to what they love and look great in black sweatshirts and drink coffee and play ball. And that's what they're going to do, I think. And I'm excited to see it.
No doubt, Ryan. And I think it's so interesting. You talked about the pressure to repeat and just the human behavior that sort of takes place there. But when you win a champion, favor. So now you're sort of and enjoy this relief for very you're going again. Challenge there is the last 2 years.
Yep. Jamal, I think we hit your Wi-Fi wall again. Can you hear me?
Did we?
Okay, you're back. So continue on.
Yeah. No, I was just saying, Ryan. I mean, I think that there's two feelings, that you have when you win a championship, right? I mean, it's ultimate joy, but there's also a significant amount of relief. And so after you win the championship, you're kind of exhausted, you're relieved, and you get to sort of enjoy that for a couple of weeks. But then, this run it back mentality is, creates all of this pressure. Now you have to sort of get out of this relief state and go to a super pressure state again. And there's only so much of that you can take, which is why it's so hard to repeat in the NFL. And it hasn't been done since the Patriots in 03-04. I mean, it's been 20 years since somebody's repeated. And so by the time you get through that second season, that defense season, whether you win it, whether you don't win it, you're just completely exhausted because you've given so much year one. You've experienced the joy, you've experienced the relief. Then you have to re-up again and deal with the pressure of being the hunted. And so when you're done with that journey, you're just kind of completely exhausted. And at the end of last season, the Rams just looked completely burnt out, the final 4, 5, 6 weeks of the season. And I think the opportunity to kind of take a step back, not worry about expectations, it's almost a rebirth. For Stafford, I think it's going to be a rebirth for Kupp, and I think it's going to be a rebirth for Donald. And I think it's going to be really, really exciting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why we've been so excited during this offseason, even with all the departures and the unknowns and the cap casualties and the no free agent signings and the late round draft picks, just because there is this rebirth feeling of something so new and so different than where this team has been the last 3 or so seasons. And obviously when this team is really back and firing all cylinders is probably going to be 2024, but there's enough there and there's enough freshness that I think this team can really do some things and have some fun. So, we'll see what these OTAs are. OTAs are, I was at them last year for the Rams, and, it's unpadded practices, guys running some drills, and there's some 7-on-7s. Here's the exciting thing about this, Jamal, if we're keeping on Stafford, is he'll probably throw in these OTAs. Remember last year, that was a big storyline too. The dude didn't throw the entire offseason.
Yep.
Did not throw at all. So you go and get an Allen Robinson in the offseason that supposedly was going to be this new RB or wide receiver 2. It was going to add a dimension to this offense. And part of it, to your credit, was not a great fit, but part of it was him and his quarterback never they never played together in the offseason until the season started. So there's no chemistry there. And so now in these offseason workouts, he'll actually be throwing the ball and running these drills. And so here's what I'll post to you as this kind of final question before we wrap up our Rams segment is all indications this offseason has been that Allen Robinson will no longer be on this team. The thought they're cutting everyone, Leonard Floyd gone. We don't have to name them all the guys that are gone. And Robinson was in that bunch. Obviously the wide receiver market is very low in free agency. And there's really not a market at all. So obviously it seems like there's been no trade partners wanting Allen Robinson. So it would have to come down to most likely a cut, which will just be more dead money and really get nothing out of it in terms of this season. And he's only got 1 year left on his deal. Only signed a 3-year deal. So after the season, only got 1 year left. So my question for you is, we've thought all along he was going to be gone regardless, but since Stafford can be throwing, since perhaps a rapport can be made, is there a conversation now about, you know what? They're already paying him. Why take on the dead money hit? He's already here. He's only got 1 year left. They could cut him next year if they want to, because he's in the final year of his contract and there's a lot less dead money. What if they just make it work and actually have him play this season and hopefully build a rapport with Stafford? What do you think about that? Or do you still think it's best just to move on and cut your losses?
No, Ryan, I think it's a great point. I mean, Allen Robinson is Cam Akers 2.0 is what you're essentially saying here in
Right?
terms of the logic. I think it works. I think that the Rams go all in on Van Jefferson being wide receiver number 2. So if Robinson is okay with being the third guy or even the fourth guy in some scenarios where you want to go D2 or what have you, if he's good with that and wants to sort of compete in terms of that role and find his niche, I don't think the Rams are going to have any problem with it and say, hey, let's figure out a spot for you. But if he's a guy who says, look, you paid me, I want to be a top 2 receiver in this league, and that's really what he's going after, then I think the Rams are just going to move forward and make the cut and kind of cut their losses. So I think it's going to come down to what Allen Robinson wants, given the Rams' position. And, hey, depending on, maybe there's another seance and an intervention that Sean McVay has with Allen Robinson, the way he did with Cam Akers during the bye week. And then it was like, hey, we don't want you. Just kidding. You're going to be our workhorse for the last 2 months of the season. If Allen Robinson is okay with the role of having more of a secondary, tertiary role in this receiving corps, why not make it work?
Oh, that's a great point. I think this one thing this organization has shown, specifically Sean McVay and his staff, is like, whether it's them or someone inside, but stuff gets leaked very quickly about player moves, and seemingly there's no coming back from that. And yet they do a very good job of patching up difficult situations and becoming friendly again. Like, if you're ever anyone out there, if you're having relationship trouble and you need someone to come in and patch up your relationship, I think Sean McVay needs to be on speed dial, because apparently this guy is a shrinking level Harrison Ford type therapist that can come in and really make things amendable yet again, because we've seen time and time again where players seem like on their way out or aren't performing well at one point in the season, and then they have this kind of coming of age and this relationship, patchwork, if you will, and then they make it right. And so if anyone can do it with Allen Robinson, I think it is Sean McVay, and can get him more involved. But I agree with you 1,000%. I think this needs to be the year of Van Jefferson, and Allen Robinson needs to be okay with being, it can't get any less active than he was last year. So I think even if he's wide receiver 3 or 4 on the depth chart, he's still going to get the same amount of targets. So it's not going to be a drop off from last year, but I think they need to really have Van Jefferson as, the Garfunkel to Kupp's Simon, and be the true wide receiver 2, as probably a terrible analogy, but you know what I mean. He needs to be the true wide receiver 2 in this situation. So we'll see, but I do think there is something to be said that Stafford will actually be throwing to these guys and hopefully building rapport and building chemistry and building that up. So we'll have plenty more coverage for you for Rams coverage. We'll be back later in the week for our pre-recorded podcast. As always, we'll be live on ESPN Radio 1090 Friday from 5 to 7. And back next Monday, we'll let you know later in the week if we're going to do 6 o'clock or 8 o'clock. We'll see. We'll play around with. I'm kind of liking this little late night vibe a little better, Jamal. I don't know. We'll see what we're feeling later. We might be keeping it at 8 o'clock, but we'll let everyone know. So either way, we'll be back Monday Night Live talking all thing Rams.
And look, I think the late night vibe, Brian, works really well. If we're talking about Sean McVay, the matchmaker, because if McVay goes 5-12 again, Brian, there's an argument to be made that he's a better matchmaker than a coach. So, we're gonna get that late night vibe going, in terms of trying to matchmake some Rams fans with some success here.
Yeah, the LAFB lounge, and get those little vibes. Captain Chaos, he likes 8. We could have Delilah, the famous, what is that, Coast 103.5, the famous Delilah, like Yeah, so we could have those kind of
And
vibes.
you got to
And
get that soft, the soft voice, the soft, deep voice going.
yeah.
And, you just got to make love to the microphone, Ryan. And then,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
game on.
Exactly. We got Thomas on the line who has a song for his loved ones back east, and we want to hear from you. And thank you for calling in, Delilah. Is there anything more LA than Delilah? Is she still on the
Yeah.
radio?
Yeah. I don't know. That's a good question. That's some good homework for us for next week.
That is some good homework. Because if not, we'll have to have her on, and she can be our behind the scenes, our Robin to the Howard Stern show, if you will. Last question for you, non-Rams related. Do you ever listen to, and this is just because we're on the topic of radio, do you ever listen to 98.7 alternative?
I do.
Whatever it's.
Yeah.
How do they still call themselves LA's new alternative? They've been a station for like a decade now. It drives me crazy.
They've been. Oh no, it's wild. 98.7, and then the other one that kind of drives me crazy is when I listen to 102.7 Kiss FM, and they do Ryan's Roses. Where they're trying to catch people cheating in the act, and it's kind of like they've been doing it for 15 years. Like you would think people know that they're being set up. So that's going to be really, that one also, in the words of one of my friends, Sam Kim, that really grinds my gears, Ryan. So
there you go. Grinds my gears. Yeah, I agree. I don't even listen to Kiss FM, so I don't listen to a lot of radio, but I really only listen to radio. I listen to 98.7, the Woody Show, when I'm dropping my daughter off before work, before I go to the office. And so, but it's still on the commercials. It's LA's new alternative. I'm like, this has been on for a decade. And it'd be one thing if they were talking about LA's new alternative as in like the new alternative music, but it's like they're playing Green Day Dookie, they're playing Linkin Park, Hybrid Theory. Like that's not new alternative. So I have no problem with it, but like just change your slogan. It's time for a rebrand. Anyway, it's all the time we got. Thank you all for listening to the LA Football Show. Like I said, we'll be back later in the week, back next Monday. According to Captain Chaos, we'll be back at 8. If you have any interest on Chargers talk, we're jumping over to the Chargers channel now to talk Chargers for the next 30 minutes before we wrap up LAFB Live on a Monday. For Jamal Madney, I'm Ryan Dyrud. Thank you all for